Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Hillsborough. We are an open and welcoming congregation. Whoever you are, member, friend, or guest, we are glad that you are here. We are a community of liberal, open-minded people who strive to connect with one another in love. We are defined by a covenant rather than by a statement of belief or creed. We support each other in spiritual growth, deepening of faith, and challenge one another to find more love and deep truth inside ourselves and in the world. I would like to thank everyone who has made this special worship celebration possible, starting with our amazing worship music coordinator, Aviva Enoch. Thank you to Patty O'Connor, who is our listening ear today. Thank you to AJ Mayhew and AC Tharrington for producing and distributing our order of service. My name is Heather Kraft, and I will be the worship associate today. Today is our Day of the Dead service. This is not a traditional service with a speaker, but a time when all who wish to remember someone who has passed are invited to come up and share. Before we create our sacred space and begin worship, let's take a moment to share any announcements. I'm going to do the first one, which is there's a Halloween carnival this afternoon from 3 to 6, and if you want to help me decorate, I would love help. You can just stay after the service.
I have a couple of announcements. AC and Terry are in their new place, yay, thanks to lots of volunteer help. I'm still hoping to share the responsibility of taking AC to and from church every Sunday now that he's no longer my neighbor. He's just 5 minutes away from church. It's very easy to find at Eno Haven Apartments. We have somebody for next week. My hope is that people will sign up to do it once a month. And we can use, there's already a sign up, lots of helping hands site, but if you are not comfortable using it, just tell me and I'll sign you up on that site. So I'm hoping to find, we've got 2 of us, I'm hoping to find at least like 2 or 3 other people who wouldn't mind doing it as part of a rotation. One more announcement. We have our new sound system is fully operational today for the first time. We've got these new speakers. We have new microphones and new mic cords. That's thanks to Alan Julick. We have this new sound rack. Steve Hancock, who is Jen Hancock's husband, put in an amazing amount of work, energy, effort to design and build this thing with Alan's assistance. It's been more than a year in the making, and it is finished. So several of us had training on Friday. If any outside groups or anyone needs to learn how to use it, we need to get you some basic training on it first before you can mess with it. That's all. Oh yeah, the Songbirds meets 1 week from tonight. That's our singing group. All are welcome. It's going to be 7 to 8:30 here in the sanctuary. So if you love to sing, please join us. If you'd like to be on our email list, I can get you on our email list. Thank you.
I'm Peg Wolf, and as I said last week, I had a quilt in the show, and it got a blue ribbon, and I brought it. It's squeezed in between, and it is a challenge based on another quilt, which is that small piece of paper down there. We were supposed to do it in the style, but not copy it. And so I brought that today. It does have some connection with Day of the Dead because it was exhibited as part of Quilt National, which is in Athens, Ohio. And those of you who've been around for a while knew Margaret Trisellini. And she's the one that's, when I started quilting, she said, "Oh, you need to go to Athens, Ohio, to the Quilt National." She was a faculty member at the university there. So it does have a connection today.
Well, thank you so much for playing it.
Hello, I'm Alicia, and on December the 10th, I will be getting married here at noon, and you are all invited to come to it. There are invitations in a pile out on the table near the door out in the foyer. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me about it, but you're all welcome to come. December 10th, noon, here. I just want to remind you that we are having our Pathway to Membership classes. We started last week, so if you missed last week, that's fine. You can make that one up. And the next one is on November the 6th. And Jeff is going to be having his inaugural class and that one will be about our finances and how we operate financially. But there's a handout about it on the visitors table outside, and I will be here during coffee hour if anyone has any other questions about it. Everyone is welcome. And if you're not new to the congregation, but you're still a little fuzzy about how things work, come anyway. We would love to have everyone participate.
If there are no more announcements, please silence your cell phones or put them in worship mode. Because Orange County is in the green, masks are optional. Yay. We are now going to create our sacred space by lighting our chalice, which is the UU symbol for the light of truth that each of us seeks, the light of hope that each of us brings, and the eternal light of love.
Our light was under the chair, she is coming. For our light in the chalice, we have The Paradox of Ancestry by Chris Rothbauer. I'm assuming you're pronouncing that correctly. We gather together this morning because others come before us. Some have left examples for us to follow, others lessons for us to learn from. And the paradox is that many have left both pain and joy. We honor our ancestors this morning, not because they're perfect, but because without them, we wouldn't be here together, sharing our joy, our pain, our living, and our dying. Please stand in body or spirit as we sing our opening hymn. Our opening hymn is I Cannot Think of Them as Dead, which is number 96 in your black hymnals.
Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a sharing community where our joys are celebrated, and a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. Each Sunday, we take some time to reflect on the special happenings that have occurred this week among our members and friends. Some choose to share aloud, while others choose to remain silent. Here, we make room for both. For those of you who would like to share aloud, please take a moment before we begin to center yourself and collect your thoughts so that what you share this morning is personal, heartfelt, and brief. Please come forward, tell us your name, and share what is in your heart. When you are finished, you may release a stone into the vase on the altar. If you're joining us online and would like to share with those here, please put your joys or sorrows into the chat and indicate whether you would like them read aloud here, and we can drop a stone for you. joys and sorrows remaining in your hearts, I invite you to come to the altar and release a stone into the vase in silence while Aviva plays Voice Still and Small. After Aviva has played it through, you're all invited to join in singing. The words are printed in your order of service. These things within the heart of this community, both spoken and unspoken, by remaining silent for a moment as we consider what has been shared and how we might respond. May the community respond, Amen, and blessed be. We're now going to sing the children to their class with the children's blessing, which is inside the back cover of the hymn book. Your mind be open to the learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice. Today we gather together to celebrate the lives of those we have lost. Many cultures celebrate the Day of the Dead with feasts and flowers. Marigolds are the most common flower, as the brilliant colors and alluring scents are thought to guide the deceased back to the land of the living. The food served sometimes has traditional or regional meanings, but is always meant to gather the living together to remember the dead. In Guatemala, people fly giant kites in a ceremony believed to date back 3,000 years to when indigenous Guatemalans used kites to communicate with those who had passed on to the next life. Most cultures also set up an altar on which to put pictures or mementos. These are seen as helping spirits find their living kin. A common belief is that if there is no special item to guide the departed, they will not be able to find their way back. Today, we have an altar set up upon which to place any items that you may have brought. I invite any who wish to share to come up Tell us a little bit about who you're remembering, and then place your memento on our altar.
These are all my trinkets for Day of the Dead. So I brought those for you to enjoy.
In 2020, in the middle of COVID, my mother went into intensive care and eventually was put on a ventilator because she believed that she had COVID and that she was going to recover. But it turns out she did not actually have COVID. She had congestive heart failure, and her lungs and her heart were giving up, and she wasn't able to breathe on her own. But she recovered a little bit, and they took her off the ventilator, and so she had a really good 24 hours. We were all able to talk to her. And then her heart and lungs started failing again, and the doctor asked her if she wanted to go back on the ventilator. And thank heavens, she said no. And we were all able to gather and be with her. Since she did not have COVID, they allowed us in. And the 5 kids were able to be there with her and say goodbye. And she was lucid, and the grandkids were calling and FaceTiming her, and we were all able to be there with her. And it was amazing. I had never been with someone when they passed before. But this is a picture of my mom with my dad. My dad passed 11 years before my mom. And my mom is my age in this picture. And you can see here, there are 2 Mai Tais in front of them because this is how they lived. They had a lot of fun. And I like to think that I am living out that tradition by having a whole lot of fun. Thank you.
Friday will mark the 5th anniversary of Bridie's passing on. For those of you who never had the privilege of knowing her, this is her picture, one of her pictures. Halloween was a special holiday for her because she claimed to be a witch. A good witch, of course. I'm not sure about that. But I know she bewitched me.
Good morning, my name is Ronaine Goddard, and I've moved to share my memories very briefly of a man named Gerald J. Judd. He founded a retreat center in the Catskill Mountains that still operates to this day, 45 years later. He died 3 years ago, just weeks shy of his 100th birthday. We were already planning his celebration. And I don't grieve his death, although it seemed premature, even at 99 and, 7/8. It seemed premature because of how vibrant he was right to the end of his beautiful life. And I can say with confidence that he passed on to the next life, whatever that might be, in joy and even ecstasy. Life well lived, who serves as a model for me to this day. He was a crazy man. Absolutely crazy. I mean, if you saw him, you'd say, "Oh, this guy is clearly playing the part." He dressed up in a Halloween costume for the part of Nehemiah, or one of the great Old Testament prophets. He had a big white hair and white beard and a big grin on his face, and did 90 minutes of yoga every morning. He was a crazy man, and ate terribly. He just ate lard soaked potatoes in the morning and somehow made it to a century old. And I think I'm moved to share about him this morning because even though he was a great spiritual teacher in his own right, he loved his connection to his local church in northeastern Pennsylvania. He loved to be around people who, even if they didn't hold the same view of the divine that he did, were there just simply to explore their own vision of the divine. He said, he was from Texas, as I am. He said, "I just like being around people who are doing their best to figure it out." Whenever I go visit him, he'd always, once we kind of got past the greetings and settled into his living room for our chats, he'd always ask the same question. He'd say in this dripping Texas accent from where he hadn't lived in decades and decades. He would say, "Well, how is it going? What have you learned lately on your journey to God?" And I still to this day think that's one of the most delightful questions I can ask somebody. How's it going lately? What have you learned lately on your journey to God? So, Gerald J. Judd, a crazy man.
Hi, I'm Alicia. This is a photo of me and my dad when I was about 12 years old. My dad died when I was 23 years old, and he was not quite 50 years old. But he was very influential on my life. You can't hear me? Sorry. Maybe I can adjust it better. Okay, so my dad was an attorney. He was a family lawyer when I can remember, but I know that earlier in his life he was also a prosecutor, and he volunteered his time with many social organizations in our community as a lawyer for those organizations. So he was very active with the ARC for people with developmental disabilities. He was very active with a group called DAISY, which was for domestic abuse survivors. And he was especially active and founded a group called PSS, which is Project Self-Sufficiency, which was an organization that helped displaced homemakers after their spouse had left them to get back on their feet. And so PSS up in New Jersey has their campus now named after him in his honor. And so he's well remembered up there for his work with that organization. But growing up, he was always quite a role model to me for being active in justice in the community, and so I'm always remembering him.
I'll just say something else about my mom. My dad died when he was 59. He was about my age. They had just retired to this log cabin in the mountains, sold everything. My dad was a neurosurgeon and led a super busy life, as you might imagine. And then within months of him retiring, he died of cancer. And so she had to start over. And this is the one thing that she really taught all of us, was that we could just, we could do it ourselves. Whatever it was that we decided we wanted to do or were interested in doing, we should just go do it. So I am a hopeless DIY fanatic, as my wife will attest. And so I've always held that as important, to not limit yourself in your own mind to the things that you can or can't do. As one example, my mom in 1967, with 2 kids and another on the way, decided she wanted to learn how to fly an airplane. And she went and joined a little group of women pilots out at RDU called the Petticoat Pilots. Mind you, she had 2 small, like, little crumb snatchers with another one on the way, and she's out there taking her flight lessons and then going solo, eventually with those 2 crumb snatchers, one of them being me, hanging on to the inside of that tin can with an engine as she roared up into the skies, bouncing around on the air, and just because she decided she wanted to know how to do that. So everything about her life was just unconventional in many ways.
This was all too big to put on the table here, so I thought I'd bring this up to explain it. I'm Dave Yelton. I'm going to depart from what I have done in the past and what I would normally do, which is to celebrate or honor those that were closest to me in life that have passed away, such as my sister, who passed away some 35 years ago in her mid-40s, and my wife, Cindy, who passed away 10 years ago this year. I'm going to do a group celebration of life in my family. These 2 pictures capture all the generations, my parents and their parents and all of my aunts and uncles in 2 pictures. And I do that sort of as a response to, we had a service about 5 or 6 weeks ago on Ancestry. Yuri Yamamoto gave us quite some in-depth feelings about honoring generations of the past and honoring where we come from. This first picture is a picture, you can't see it too well unless you get up close to it, which is my father's family, his parents and all of his siblings on the courthouse stairs of Cleveland County in Shelby, North Carolina. My grandparents, who I only knew my grandmother, my grandfather passed away before I was born. My father is the youngest of 8 children, actually 7 children. He is standing on the courthouse stoop beside his father. My father was 5 years old in this picture. This was taken in 1918 or 19. I'm not sure the exact date. He appears to be standing there in maybe a hand-me-down from one of his older sisters. It looks like, it's almost like a dress with a sash. But that's the way they did it back then. Children of that age were almost like unisex, I guess, in a sense. But he's cute at 5. And his 5 sisters and his 1 brother. So this captures 2 generations of my family on my father's side and all the aunts and uncles that I knew in our family reunions that took place, not annually, but pretty often. The other picture is the other side of my family, which is my mother's christening, I guess. She's there as a 1-year-old with her parents in Atlanta, Georgia. This is my grandfather and my grandmother. And I never knew my grandmother on that side. She died before I was born. My grandfather was a mainstay in my house growing up, though. He was there when I was born in my household, and he lived till he was 94, so he was around for most of my growing up life as both a older generation and my playmate. He used to play baseball with me and do adventures with me when I was quite small. And lastly, I thought this would be just a way to celebrate time and the family. This was a watch. Looks like it'd be worth a worth a lot. It is worth something, but to make it operate again, it would probably cost more than the watch is worth. But this is a trainman's watch that was given to my grandfather by his father in New York City before my grandfather left to go south. He went south to Charleston, South Carolina, because he supposedly had lung conditions that wouldn't allow him to live north in the cold climate anymore. So he came south for health, but he never returned to the north. So as far as I know, this was the last connection between my grandfather and his father. And he kept this all of his life and passed it down to my mother and then to me as a remembrance of that 1901 leaving of New York City to come south, where his life continued. He met my grandmother, and the rest is history.
I'll tell you about my dad, Jacob Enoch. He was a big influence in my life. He passed away in 2008. He was a physics professor who loved to travel and took my family all over the world, and he also lived in many different places. He was born in Berlin in 1927, and when the Nazis came to power, his family fled Berlin and they moved to what was then Palestine, and that's where he grew up. And then he moved to the United States as a young man and met my mom. And he was just a brilliant man, and he spoke 4 languages. And one thing that happened 10 years before he died, he had a major stroke where he lost the ability to speak and to use his right hand. And but he worked so hard to recover. He was a lifelong learner and always interested in learning and studying and getting as good as he possibly could at something. And he worked so hard on his recovery, and he taught himself to speak again. His speech was never fluent the way it was before, but he learned how to form every single syllable carefully. And I mean, he was telling jokes, and he was walking again, and he never could recover his right hand, but he learned to type with his left hand, and he wrote his memoirs with his left hand, even though he had some aphasia, some speech difficulties and spelling difficulties at that point, but he had a great memory, even despite all of that, and he was able to type out his memoirs with his left hand, and that was like the project the last few years of his life. And he also spent time digitizing all our family photos. He was really big on using the computer and had his office in the basement and would just spend all his time there.
I'd like to share about my one grandmother, my maternal grandmother, Ethel, middle initial M. She would never disclose what that stood for. And her family name was Hull, Hull. I think she is notable. She grew up in Wisconsin and went out to the Dakotas because she had a brother who was out there, and she went out to kind of keep house for him. And while she was there, she read the book Origin of the Species. And after she read it, she lay on her bed crying because she knew this was going to change her view of the world. And I think that part of why my husband and I grew close was because he had a similar experience where some of what he had been brought up to believe, he just couldn't believe anymore. So I want to celebrate my grandmother, Ethel Hull.
Hi, my name's G, and I'm fortunate to have not lost many people in my life, but I did lose my best friend at one point. His name was Christopher Maguda, and I still think of him to this very day. He, in his youth, he signed up to join the forces and served in the military in Afghanistan. And when he came back, he was horribly changed due to the horrible crimes he'd committed against people, and he took his own life. And it's, like I said, I still think of him. He was a great guy.
Thank you very much, everyone who shared. Each week we take a monetary offering to support our social justice work in the community. This support comes in the form of donations. Today, our donations are going to our minister's discretionary fund. You may donate by putting cash or a check in the basket. Please make checks payable to UUCH and put plate in the subject line. You can also donate by going online to our website, uuchnc.org, or by scanning the QR code in your bulletin. Please join me in our prayer of collective gratitude found in your order of service. For the love that surrounds us every morning, for the friends beside us, and for the generous gifts just received, let us be truly grateful. Our closing hymn is number 1001 in your teal hymnal, Breaths.
For our closing words, we have Inspired by Our Ancestors by Leah Derlin Jones. For those who came before us, we offer gratitude and thanks. May the memories be a blessing. May we feel surrounded by their love. As we go forth from this time and place, let us be inspired by their courage, their wisdom, and their dreams. Let us honor them by doing the work of living boldly, loving mightily, and creating a heaven on earth. Amen, and blessed be.
Amen.
Please join me in our closing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace, my friends, and blessed be.
There are coffee and snacks in the library.
Yes, coffee and snacks are in the library.
I sent him a couple texts.